Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name is Radha Priti, and I am here with a family of seekers. We are reading through the Bhagavad Gita and learning about its meaning and relevance to our lives. And we're in chapter 5 today. So we're still in this karma yoga section. We're learning a lot about karma yoga or detached action. So working in a mood of selflessness. And this particular episode, it's this episode's for anybody who's like me and gets caught in the rush of trying to prove themselves. Anybody get caught in that? It's like, I think, been like my whole life trying to prove themselves, whether it's at work or in your relationships or even in spiritual practices. It's so easy to get caught in constantly striving for outcomes, making everything about the results, how things look or how they make us feel. But over time, we realize that it oftentimes makes us more restless than peaceful. It's like no matter how much I achieve, I'm still searching for something deeper. And that's what happens to us. That's been my experience. And I'm thinking many of your experiences here who are here listening. So in this section of the Gita that we're going to talk about today, Krishna is not asking us to stop acting or to avoid life. He shows us that it's not about what we do, but why we do it. So not about what we do, but why we do it. So he invites us to shift from acting for the sake of results to acting for purification. And this simple shift in intention, it cleanses our hearts. It cleanses our hearts and it quiets our minds. And ultimately, it brings us back to our true selves, just this shift from acting for results to acting for purification. So it's not about abandoning the world, but it's about offering it to God without attachment to outcomes. So in this section of the Gita, Krishna is going to help us see how we can stay fully engaged in life while still finding peace, freedom, and ultimately connection to the divine. So the question is, can I still live, work, love, and serve, but in a way that brings peace instead of pressure? That sounds nice, right? Peace instead of pressure. So does anybody want to volunteer to read today? We're going to start with text 11. Chapter 5, text 11 is where we're starting. Mariah, great. I'll go ahead and share my screen if you want to read that text for us.
The yogis, abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, intelligence, and even with senses, only for the purpose of purification.
So there's that word again, purification. So he's saying the yogis, they work, but without emotional desire for results. Their motivation is purely purification. And purification means to stop identifying the body as the self. And this frees the heart from the need to prove, or please, or possess when we can get purified and stop identifying the body as the self. So, what does it actually look like to work just for purification? Again, it's not that you have to stop doing anything. You can still show up to your job, take care of your responsibilities. You don't have to quit your job. You don't have to, walk away from the things that you're doing. But the why behind it all shifts. Why you're doing all of these things. You're not doing it to prove yourself or to control, to make sure that everything turns out a certain way. You're doing these things to clean your heart. So it's like, okay, God, I'm doing this as an offering to you. Whatever comes out of it, that's up to you. I just want this to help me become more surrendered, more humble, more connected. It's like changing our intention behind why we're doing things. And our intention becomes whatever I'm doing, I just want this to make me more surrendered, more humble, more connected. And that's the purification. That's the purification that happens. So it's working with the world, but not for the world. So we're working in the world, but not for the world. We're not chasing outcomes. We're just choosing purification. And this is really beautiful because again, whatever it is that we do, we can still engage in, but just shift our intention around it, right? From that mentality that I'm the doer, I'm the controller, to I'm doing this in a mood of service. I'm a humble servant. I'm doing this for connection. I'm doing this to become more surrendered. So changing your outcomes purifies you, or sorry, changing your intention purifies you because it changes the consciousness behind your action. And in bhakti, consciousness is everything. So when we act with ego, in that mentality that I'm the doer, I want this result, this is for me, we're reinforcing the illusion that we're separate from God. And this is what creates what we call bondage to the material world, where we get stuck in this cycle of birth and death, right? Because we're getting all these karmic reactions and we're having all these desires and we're coming back. Again, our soul is coming back again and again to fulfill those desires. And this is what creates this bondage and anxiety when we're reinforcing the illusion that we're separate from God. When we have this I mentality, I'm the doer, I want what I want. Right? But when we can shift the intention to this is for God, I'm just the instrument, then we're aligning ourselves with reality. That's the rightful position of things. That what I'm doing is for God. I'm just the instrument. In that way, we're remembering that our true position is a servant, not a controller. How many of us want to be controller? Oh my gosh. I have a fun story for you guys today about that. But this awareness, it gradually dissolves the false ego, which is the root of impurity. When we can realize that we're a servant, not a controller, then we can dissolve that our false ego will naturally dissolve. And that's the root of impurity, where it starts. So we can think of it like a camera lens. If our lens is covered with dust, which is like selfish desires, attachments, pride, we can't see clearly. But when our motivation is to serve and remember God, it's like wiping that lens clean. So you begin to see things as they are and you feel lighter and more peaceful because we're not dragging the burden of the false ownership or control mentality. So something for us all to think about, right? When do we feel like I'm the doer, right? And when do you feel like you're the doer? You want to be the controller. How does that affect your peace? Just yesterday, it was like it was like a really nice day. We had like a perfect temperature. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold. My husband and I are talking in the morning, like, oh, what are we going to do today? And I really wanted to do yard work. And my husband wanted to fix his brakes, which kind of frustrated me because his brakes have been broken for like a year and a half. We just share a car, and it was the first nice day, and I really wanted to clean the yard. So we kind of like argue about it for a little bit, and then he goes downstairs, and then I chant my rounds, and then after I chant my rounds, I think, you know what? If he wants to fix his brakes, that's fine. Like I'd rather just love and support him than and have some peace than like any tension from us disagreeing about what we want to do today. And so I go downstairs and I give him a hug and say, I'm sorry. If you want to fix your brakes, you can fix your brakes. And then guess what he does? He spends all day doing the lawn work. But anyway, it was like in that moment, like when I kind of took some time, connected back with God, it was like, I don't want a day full of tension today. Like that would be the worst. Whether the lawn work gets done or not, it's like, let's just have some peace and love. And that's what we're being challenged to do here, right? Where we can areas in our life where we can release this notion, this mindset that I'm the doer, I'm the controller, things have to be my way, or I won't be happy, right? Or I'm gonna get in a fight with my husband about it. Where can we let go of this and insert a little bit more detachment, insert a little bit more love? That's what we're being challenged to do in these verses today. So in the prior sections, if you remember, we talked a lot about this is active yoga, where we engage the senses. And we talked a lot about contemplative yoga. This is the yan yoga, where we're more contemplative, and we're renounced from the world. So again, this is action, yoga in action. We're talking about engaging the senses that normally cause us bondage to this world. Again, bondage, the repeated cycle of birth and death. These same senses can lead to liberation if we engage them properly. So the senses are so powerful, but they're not the problem. It's where they're pointed. And when the senses are engaged in God's service, so hearing, chanting, working for him, they can become the instruments of liberation. And at this final stage, when we're completely purified, the senses can actually bring us such great ecstasy. Wherever they would normally would cause us bondage in this material world, if we're completely purified, we're completely connected with God, understanding our rightful position, the senses can actually bring us great ecstasy. So if you remember, we talked a while back about practicing spiritual life for these four reasons, for these four motivations. And these motivations are increasing in consciousness. So the lowest motivation is practicing spiritual life for fear. Like, I'm afraid if I don't do this, this is going to happen. So I'm practicing it out of fear. And then practicing spiritual life for desire. Like, I want this, like a Amazon Prime relationship with God. And then duty, and that's more of the karma yoga realm. That's more what we're talking about here, actually. And then love is the highest. It's like the bhakti. So the level of duty is where most of us are performing sadhana. When we're waking up, we're performing our spiritual practices. We call that sadhana. So this is like, I will follow these directions so I'll become elevated and liberated. And in this place, even if the mind can't focus, sometimes, we're chanting or we're reading or whatever we're doing, our mind is not super focused, but at least our senses can be engaged. And again, normally the senses cause bondage. But if we can engage them, even if our minds aren't quite there, we can still purify. We can still experience that purification. So normally our senses cause bondage. We have to be careful of how much we engage them. But if we engage them in God consciousness, they can purify us and like we talked about, be the cause of extreme ecstasy. So to go between the two levels, from where our senses cause us bondage to where our senses are engaged in God consciousness, it takes a little bit of time, and we have to have some tolerance, some determination, some steadiness. We have to commit to the practice, steadily engaging in the process of purification. But if we commit and we work that way, we'll get there. But we have to understand that. We have to expect that it's going to be a little bit of an austerity to commit to it, to say, okay, I'm going to wake up early every morning and I'm going to chant God's names for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, whatever it is, whatever our practice is. And we commit to it. And this is the practice of karma, what we're doing here, of karma yoga. So if a person is engaging in God consciousness, he has no false ego. This is like the perfected stage. He knows that he's not this body and it doesn't belong to him. He belongs to God and his body belongs to God. And if he applies everything to God's service, then he's dovetailed with God. He's one with God. He's devoid of the false ego that makes us believe that we're the body. This is again the highest state, the state of perfection. And that's what we want to work towards. And souls who understand this and work for the purpose of purification attain liberation. And he's going to talk about this in the next verse. So we'll go to the next verse. Does anybody want to share anything before we go to the next verse? Anybody thinking of instances in your life where you want to be the doer, the controller, and how that brings you the opposite of peace?
Can I share something?
Yeah, please share.
Similar to you, yesterday, our plan, my husband said, which, he's like, oh, why don't we go to the temple in Toronto? They're having a kirtan later, they're having food, they're doing this. He's like, and then if you want to go early, you can, I know you want to do some service. What a lovely thing, right? So I'm like, okay, perfect. And then like in the middle of the day, like you were talking about this like, I can't even remember it. Like this argument happened, and I don't know what happened with him, but he got very like caught up on something that was just not even happening. It was like from like a year ago, and he just got like, he was like holding on to it like for dear life. And I said, why are we arguing? Like, what is happening here? What just happened? Like, we were in this great place. And then I stepped away, kind of like you did. And I went upstairs and I chanted. And then he yelled upstairs, are we still going to go to the temple? It's like, and I was like, okay, so that's him like sort of apologizing, like just saying, I let it go. And I could have, the old Stacy would have been like, I'm not going in, like that whole, like, I'm holding on to it and you ruined it all. I'm going to, you know? And I just said, oh, you want to still go to the temple? And he said, well, yeah, when are we going to go around 3 o'clock? And so, you know what? Like you, similarly, like God, chanting the God's name really just allows me to purify my heart and my soul to the extent that I just let it go. God changed. And we went to the temple and we were chanting kirtan. There was a Swami talking about reading from the Bhagavad Gita. And so we spent like 4 hours at the temple and I was book service. I was selling books at the temple entrance. And it was like so it could have been the old Stacy would not that would have ended in like you screwed our whole day up and I'm holding that against you. I'm going to put that on the calendar of day that my husband ruined the whole day.
Yeah.
And instead I let it go.
Isn't that the best?
Right.
Letting it
And it was
go.
just
Yeah.
beautiful. And it was like, and he was even in there sitting with me during kirtan and he was singing Hare Krishna, even though he
Oh,
doesn't practice, he just is
yeah.
there supporting me.
So nice. Yeah, we don't realize when we hold on that, yeah, we're carrying our own burden. Some of these things that in the grand scheme of things, really, you're not even going to remember in, a month. It's like, what, why do we hold on to it? Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I don't even
Yeah.
remember today,
Yeah, right, right.
like what even was happening. But what I do
Right.
remember is the offering of, I thought we're going to the temple. And my
Yeah,
heart
right.
opened up and said, wow.
That
And I
is
just
really
keep
sweet.
going.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's sweet. And isn't apologizing like the best thing in a marriage? It's like so great. My husband and I are like have perfected that. We are both great apologizers. Sometimes my husband will even apologize for things that I'm like, you don't need to apologize for that. Which my husband never used to apologize because he was like, but it's great. It's the best thing in a marriage. Apologize. Anyway, okay, so does anybody else want to share anything before we move on? Okay, let's move on to 12. 512. When you're ready, Mariah.
The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled.
So here he's comparing somebody who's attached to the fruits, to like a fruit of worker. So somebody who's attached to the results, to a person who's not, who's to a person who's connected with the absolute truth, right? And who gives up the attachment to results and therefore attains that peace that we're talking about. So you have that person, and then you have the person who's not connected and acts because of the selfish desire or lust and is very attached. And this is that kind of person becomes bound. So the Bhagavatam says that the cause of anxiety of an activity is because of the conception of duality. So if one has knowledge of the absolute truth, one understands that there is no duality. Good and bad, or these things can only come into play if we think that we're the controllers and we're attached to the outcomes of our actions. It's like if you ever stayed up all night overthinking something that you couldn't control. Did anybody ever do that? I feel like that happens to me a lot now that like I'm up all the time breastfeeding, that sometimes I can't fall back asleep because I'm just like mulling over something that I don't have any business mulling over. And if I really understood this, right, that if we understand the conception of the absolute truth, we understand that there's no duality because we know that God has our back, right? Everything that exists is God's energy. God is the controller and God is good. So therefore, there is no duality. We don't see things like that. And that's what we again want to work to attain when we can find peace in that because our faith is so strong. We don't feel like we're the controllers and that we need to control everything. And if we don't, things are going to go awry. No, we trust that everything that exists is God's energy. He's the controller and he's good. He's all good. So we don't have to be. And this is how activities in God consciousness are on that absolute plane. They're transcendental. They have no material effect. And this is how one is filled with peace, by this realization, by knowing this. This is what fills one with peace. And we may not get to that high place where we have no duality, but maybe we'll see that things that used to just like rattle us or make us, mull over and over and over, we can be a little bit more relaxed about. Things that we thought we had to grip so tightly to, we can release the reins a little bit, understanding that whatever way they go or don't go is for our best interest, is God's plan. And it's not our role to control in the sense that we're so attached to it. But maybe we have a responsibility to control from a place of responsibility, but in that way, we don't need to be so attached to it or so emotionally engaged. We're doing it as a service. That's the place that we want to get to. And that's where we're gonna experience the most peace. Because let's be real, it's not fun waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to go back to sleep because something is just reeling around in your mind endlessly. So we want to develop that relationship, cultivate that relationship so that we can have that level of trust. And that level of trust and faith will create peace in our mind. So in this verse, Krishna is again comparing someone who works for result and the karma yogi. Again, in the last section, Krishna compared the karma yogi to the jnana yogi. He says that a person who is not practicing karma yoga and is trying to do inactivity, who's trying to do nothing, they'll find it difficult to become free from bondage because our nature is to act. So it's really difficult to not act, if we remember that. And in this way, he said that karma yoga is better than jnana yoga. Here he's saying that it's not the action that causes bondage. So we can act because that alone doesn't cause bondage, but it's the motivation that causes bondage. So if we remember from that last verse, we want to change our motivation to that of just seeking purification, just knowing that whatever we're doing, wanting it to make us more connected, more surrendered, more humble. That's why we're doing what we're doing. That's why we're doing what we're doing. We're not deciding the result that we want and trying to be little mini controllers. And that's what Krishna's saying in this verse, is that it's not the action that causes bondage, but it's the motivation that causes bondage. And we see this even like in the way that our justice system is ruled. We've talked about this example before, like a soldier killing for his country versus just because he wants to. If he's killing for his country, he's not getting bound by the system. He's doing it as a service. If he's doing it just because he wants to, if that's his motivation, then he's going to get punished accordingly. And this is kind of the same, similar to us in this, is that if we when we're acting, if we can purify our motivation, we're going to keep ourselves from getting bound, from getting caught in the system. And if our motivation is selfish, if we're doing it for ourselves, then we're going to get caught in the system. So in this verse, Krishna knows that Arjuna has a longing for peace. Arjuna's talked about that a lot. He's been confused. Remember, he's been confused because he's saying, you want me to be peaceful, but you want me to fight. But Krishna knows that that's ultimately his objective, that's what he wants. So he's saying, if you do this, you will obtain the supreme peace. Don't think that you'll get peace by avoiding war. As long as one has material attachments, you won't be peaceful, even if you avoid war. But if you act in karma yoga and purify yourself of material attachment, you will get an unattainable, unshakable peace. But if you work out of material desires, out of selfishness, and you're attached to the fruit, you'll become bound. That's what real peace is. A lot of people have like a facade of peace in the world, but when something happens, they become extremely agitated. But Krishna is saying, when you have no agitation, nothing of the world can destroy you. And that's what he's trying to lead our Arjuna here to. And ultimately from this verse, there's no existence besides Krishna. Everything is working in God's sanction, in Krishna's sanction. Whatever happens, it can't happen without this sanction. So whatever exists is his energy. And whenever we see anything as separate, we should know that we're an illusion. When we can see everything as connected, that is reality. And this is the realization, this is the platform of peace and fearlessness. And this peace takes away our fear. When one understands that there's nothing but God, and He's my well-wisher, this is the platform of peace and fearlessness. And this is what we're trying to do, try to see everything as connected to God. You know who's good at this, who I know is on the call here, is Nild. Nild always has shares where he goes and does this and this, and he sees God and this and this. And just even small, just that, just as we're going about our days. I was planting a garden yesterday, seeing, you're planting a seed, that seed is growing. God is doing that. It's like really kind of amazing if we can start to see everything like that. Everything is God's energy. Everything is connected to God. Does anybody want to share anything about that? Neil, do you want to share any realizations you've had related to that? I know that's always along the line of your realizations, is how things are connected to God.
Um, I, a recent one was that my daughter is OCD. She is compulsive picking up garbage, and I was dropping her off yesterday at her mom's, and uh, she just kept picking up garbage in the parking lot, finding it all over the place, little pockets or whatever. I was starting to get a little agitated, like, okay, let's keep going, and I just looked up at the sky, and it was beautiful, and there were some clouds, and just, it was it's just a shift to see the divine up there, and to realize how divine my daughter is. To she wants to clean the earth, so who am I to be impatient? Um, so um, yeah, and just in New England, this week the trees are budding, the flowers coming. And it's just really beautiful. So yeah.
That's so nice. Wow. Thank you for sharing. It's so nice. It's so true too, is when we can shift our perspective, it's almost like it just like lifts us up immediately when we can see it like that and just kind of be in awe of of the splendor of, it's really spectacular. And it's amazing how it can just even just change our energy, shift our energy. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Such a nice story. So now in the next verse, Krishna is going to talk about how one can stay detached further. Okay, so let's go to 13. When you're ready, Mariah, you can read 13.
It's just loading. There it goes. When the embodied living being controls his nature and mentally renounces all actions, he resides happily in the city of 9 gates, the material body, neither working nor causing work to be done.
So here he's talking again about renunciation in the mind, understanding that I'm not the doer. The body is going to have certain needs. Our bodies need food, they need sustenance. These needs need to be fulfilled. But if one is renounced in the mind, they'll be able to stay happy because one won't be getting emotionally entangled with the sense objects around it. So like, again, like we talked about the last class, like eating to live instead of living to eat. This is the mindset of somebody who is renounced from this. They understand they have to eat, that's important, but they're not getting overly involved in it. And that's what Krishna's talking about here. Such a person will not be the doer or the motivator for doing to others. So Krishna's telling Arjuna that he will not be the doer. Arjuna won't be the doer. And that also Krishna won't be the doer. And when you understand this, you will not think that you're the doer of anything, nor am I asking you to do anything. That's what Krishna's saying. It's material nature that's doing everything. Like we talked about a lot in the last class. Activities of the body happen automatically because of the influence of the modes of nature. The soul is inside of the body, and it's subjected. He's subjecting himself to the conditions of the body, but the soul can go beyond these conditions if he so desires. So the body is influenced by the modes, and the soul is influenced by the body, but the soul can go beyond that if he desires. But again, the soul forgets that he's actually spiritual. He's actually such Ananda. He forgets his spiritual nature. He identifies with the body, and that's why he suffers. So that's what God consciousness is. By God consciousness, he can revive his real position. And when I think of that word, I think of like that, what's that called when you like put those electronic things on somebody when they're like out, you know? What are they? What's it called?
Defibrillator.
Yeah, well, that's quite a word. I would never came up with that. Okay, so that's like God consciousness. It's like the God consciousness defibrillator. You know, you can revive the soul, revive this position, and come out of the embodiment. And this is how one obtains happiness. This is the process. And again, if you remember the last class, we talked about the soul and the body. The body is different than the soul. It's in all the ways that it's different. Okay? The soul is spiritual. The body is material. The body is subjected to these modes. Okay? So the soul, again, identifies with the body, and that's when the soul gets bound. And in this verse, it talks about the city of 9 gates. Okay, that's like it's like comparing the body to a city. A city has 9 gates, you know, different entry and exit points, similar to the body. You know, we have 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, 2 ears, a mouth. You know, the entry and exit points for coming into the body from the external world perspective. So that's kind of the comparison of the body to a city. And it's through those that we interact with this world and we become bound. And the interaction of the soul with the external world happens through these gates. But the point here is that nobody who lives in the city thinks that they are the city. So just like a renounced person doesn't identify himself with the city of his body, the soul and the body are different. And a person who understands that, a renounced person, doesn't identify himself with the city of the body. And this doesn't mean that he's not doing anything. He's endeavoring, but he knows that success depends on powers beyond him. Therefore, he offers the results of his activities to that power, to the supreme. So for us, we want to learn to be the observers of the city instead of a resident who thinks they own it. Anybody else a resident who thinks they own it? That is like walk off of this call and right away I'm back into controller mode. So it takes this constant work, this constant connection to get here. But we can, and we have to stay steady. But that's where we want to get to. We want to get to be an observer of the city, not a resident who thinks that they own it, the city being this body. And again, this renunciation, it doesn't mean you stop working. It means you stop believing you're in charge of everything. It's just shift in consciousness. The externals can all be the same. It just means that you stop believing that you're in charge of everything. And if you happen to be in charge of everything, like if you're a mother or you're in a leadership position, right? We do those responsibilities, those roles as like functional roles, but we don't get overly like emotionally tied to them. Right? And it's very tricky. It can be very tricky. But again, if we have that service, if we are, have in a position of leadership or responsibility, we have to do it as such in the mood of a humble servant, not in the mood of like, I'm controlling everything. Everything has to go my way or I'm going to be, upset about it. So we have to shift that consciousness. We have to do that as a service. And that's what so many of these kings, like in the Bhagavatam, did. They were rulers. They were so detached. They were so renounced. They were just so dharmic, these kings. So it's possible. You can do this. You could have the most responsibility in the world, be the most powerful leader, but do it in this consciousness. Do it in the consciousness where you understand that you're not the doer, right? That you're an instrument, and do your very best to be that instrument to the best of your ability and detach from the results without getting overly involved in the results. It's possible. You could do this. So just as every well-protected city doesn't allow anyone and anything to go inside and out, we also have to regulate what goes in and out of the body so that we can stay free from bondage. We have to understand that the body is like a city. Again, whatever necessary functions there are for the body, let them happen. But we don't want to go much beyond what is necessary or get emotionally involved or entangled. So it's like if the TV is on, but a person doesn't get emotionally involved in it because they know it doesn't make them happy. So it's just like on in the background, but you're not overly emotionally vested in it. It's like that. Things are going on, but you're not getting overly emotionally entangled. To the extent that we think we're going to enjoy the sense objects, we think that I'm doing things. To that extent, we become bound. Because this enjoy mentality, if we want to enjoy things, it leads to the mindset that I'm the doer, and that leads to bondage. To this extent, we don't think this is no. To the extent that we don't think this, we don't become bound. Okay, so and it's not that enjoying is bad. No, that's not what it's saying here. It's just saying no, that this enjoy mentality, it leads to the mindset that I'm the doer, and this leads to bondage. So if we want to try to cultivate this mindset, this consciousness of being a servant of God, that's quite different than I'm the enjoyer of material nature. And we know that in that consciousness where I'm the servant of God, I'm the humble servant, I'm connected to God, that's where we obtain the greatest happiness and bliss. So that's what we're trying to do here. And again, it's baby steps because many of us have been so steeped in this doer mentality and this enjoy mentality for so long. And that's okay. But now we can recognize it, we can regulate it, and we could try to connect to something higher so that, again, we can experience the ultimate bliss and connection in this world. So Krishna's telling Arjuna to fight, but he's saying that he's not the doer. Krishna's saying that you're in a Satriya body, you're in this body of a warrior, and therefore you're going to have a particular nature that you need to act to, right? Whatever, again, we talked about this a lot too. We all have a karmic package here. We all have a certain nature. Our body has a certain nature, and it's not healthy to just repress it. Right? We have to act according to our nature. But don't become so identified with the nature that you become consumed by it. So don't solely identify yourself as a warrior, as a mother, as an employee, as whatever it is. Don't solely identify yourself as that. Know that that's your nature and you have to work according to your nature. You can't resist it, but don't overly identify it. Arjuna is a soul that's in a Satriya body. That's his vehicle. So he has to function as such. If he tries to reject that and act as a renounced person, it just won't work because that's not his karmic package. And at the same time, if he becomes totally identified with the body, he'll be so steeped in this bodily conception that he won't make much spiritual advancement. If we identify with God himself, we'll become just as free as God, even while in the body. So this is why we need to identify with our real eternal identity of this, as a soul, and understand that this vehicle, this bodily package, is just a karmic package to serve as a vehicle for our soul. And we have to act, but if we can act and dovetail it in the service of God, it can help us realize our eternal identity. And in that way, we won't be bound by our karmic package, by our bodies, by our vehicles. So act in such a way that you're not emotionally involved, you're not entangled. In this way, you'll stay free from bondage. Krishna is saying act, but without the principle of bondage and entanglement. And he's going to continue this train of thought in the next verse. And this will be the last verse that we do, 14. Does anybody want to share anything today before we move on?
I just
Stella.
want to.
Oh, yeah. Let's hear Stella and then let's hear Mariah.
Oh, yeah, I had a thought too that sometimes when we hear that, you shouldn't be the enjoyer or whatever, but we do have that natural enjoyment of some things like being a mother and holding your child or, I have found that the shift in consciousness, if I'm, if I suddenly think like, oh, I'm gonna do this so I can enjoy it, but if I'm enjoying something, I think I try to do the gratitude that, wow, Krishna's allowing me to enjoy this. It's all him. He's, so the enjoyment isn't like, I got to, do that and I'm enjoying it because I did that, like, but I was like, wow, I'm suddenly enjoying this. Thank you, Krishna. Like, And not that I expect the enjoyment to go on and on and on and on. Like it's a gift that's been given. And then
Yeah,
if I
that's
remember it's
beautiful.
from Krishna, then I don't feel as attached to it, wanting it to go on and on, because he could take it away at any moment. Um, it just occurred to me that it's like that, not being attached,
That
but
was
still
perfect.
enjoying. But
Yeah.
still enjoying. Yeah, I mean, because we're naturally enjoyers, but you know, sometimes the scripture says don't be an enjoyer, but it's like, well, our nature is to be in bliss and enjoy. So, but what are we enjoying? Is it good? Is it right? Is it kind? Is it a gift from Krishna?
And
So
you're choosing to see it as such too. And that's much different than like,
shift.
I'm the enjoyer and I did this, just like you said.
Yeah.
It's like I'm enjoying and I'm giving the credit to Krishna. In that way, you're connecting it with God. And
Yeah.
that's really nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. And such a good thing for us all if we're, experiencing just like that. Like when I look at my daughter and I think, wow, this is
Yeah.
so wonderful hearing her voice, thinking that's Krishna.
Yeah.
So nice. Thank you. It's really nice. Mariah, do you want to share something with us?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to share on that, but that is so beautiful because it's just like we can't enjoy unless it's given to us from Krishna. The only reason we have a life, we have joy, we have happiness. Like, Krishna says all happiness really ultimately comes from him. And when we serve, we actually reach a higher state of enjoyment than when we are serving ourselves. And so yeah, that's so beautiful. I was just going to bring another perspective to the whole controlling thing that's kind of coming up for me. The way you're sharing your experience is like you want to control and then you do it and you get it done. I think a long time in my life, I wanted to control things because I was surrounded by very strong women in my life who were able to control things, but I couldn't control anything because I was like the youngest sibling. And so I got really frustrated that I couldn't control anything to where I ended up at one point in my life just like not trying to do anything. And so there's like that other aspect of like, and I'm like realizing, oh, wow, that was my control mentality getting put in check. Like I realized like, well, I have no power anyway, so I'm not going to do anything. And again, coming back into bhakti, I'm learning, oh, but you still have to act. And then, yeah, you might not be and so it's like, in a sense, I've already kind of learned I'm not the controller. I mean, it's still there. It's not like it's gone or anything, but it's like, I learned, okay, yeah, you can't control anything, so don't do anything. Well, now I'm learning, oh, well, you can't control anything, but still act and don't be attached. And, so yeah, that's just like another perspective of it, I guess you could say. And so I was just
Yeah,
thinking that, yeah.
that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. It's like the opposite side of the same coin. Like that attachment to control is still there, but it's manifested itself differently
Like more in
and
the mode
you
of ignorance. So it's like just be, like I don't know. Yours manifests more in passion. I feel like mine manifested more in ignorance where I was just like, well then I'm not gonna do anything. Like screw everything,
but ultimately wherever we are, if we can act and act for Krishna, we can transcend all the modes. It doesn't even matter where we are. We can transcend all the modes, get to that transcendental plane and experience that ultimate connection with God. And that's what this is teaching us here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So nice.
actually coming from that place at one point in my life, it's like again, back to what is it Stella? I forget your devotee name. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Um, back to what she said. Now it's like a gift when I get to do an action, like when I get to go to the temple and do service and make a garland or, you know, things like that. It's like, oh my gosh, I actually get to do the things, maybe I wanted to do at one point or, and it's a beautiful thing. And you start to see it as a gift when you actually get to do the things you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So
Right. Oh,
beautiful.
so nice. Full circle there. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Trevor, where are you, Trevor? Gotta find you on here. There you are. Trevor, please share with us.
Okay, so it was very beautiful what everyone said. I was going to touch up on the enjoyer and enjoyed. This whole material situation was made through Krishna's feminine energy. So even the most masculine thing in this universe, the sun, is made of feminine energy, prakriti. The male is enjoyer, male energy. Feminine is the enjoyed. But that doesn't mean that whenever you're being enjoyed, you don't experience that joy. Whenever you're in harmony with the actual enjoyer and proprietor, then you create harmony, a harmonic relationship, and the joy is experienced equally amongst both Krishna and the expansions, the varieties he creates. Us as one of them are experiencing that joy equally. So it's Prabhupada relates it to sexual intercourse, in this world where the female is enjoyed and whatnot, but the same amount of joy is taking place. So that's an easy way to understand it. But the idea is to, when you're learning in the beginning, is to figure out what real joy is as opposed to false enjoyment. Because if we're doing things for surface level joy or to please our senses, then it's very temporary and it follows suit with suffering and distress. We have to pay for that, But whenever it comes to joy in the service attitude, it's completely transcendental to the spectrum. Like, you can even enjoy going through observing symptoms of depression come up in yourself. You can actually enjoy it, on the transcendental platform, because you're in that harmonic relationship with Krishna. You're able to actually experience all sides of the spectrum in life while still being in that dominant, joyful state.
Wow. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Okay, let's do this last verse here. It's short, and then if anybody else wants to share. It's so nice hearing from you all. Love all the different perspectives and experiences. Thank you. So, Mariah, 14.
The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature.
Thank you. So in this verse, again, he's saying the soul is not the doer. He neither does things nor makes others do things. All this happens by material nature. So the soul lives in the temporary body and identifies with it. And this is what causes bodily suffering and distress. So it's like the soul rides in the car of the body, but when it thinks that it is the car, it starts feeling every bump as its own crisis. So this is why we don't want to overly identify with the body. Understand that it's a vehicle and it can be used as an instrument to serve Krishna. And in that way, we can transcend this material domain. And so as soon as the soul can be aloof from the activities of the body, he can become free from the reactions. Again, that's kind of the same thing. We can be free from the reactions of this world if we can be aloof from the activities. If we can be just doing it, if we can be changing our intention, our motivation, our internal intention to directing it towards God, we can transcend, we can be free from these reactions. So as long as he's in the body, he appears to be the master of it, but he's not. And that's kind of summarizes what these verses have been teaching us. The Gita is offering this profound vision. Krishna's telling us that the body's a machine. The body's a machine, it's going to act in a particular way. When the soul identifies with it, it will become bound. But when the soul doesn't identify with it, but utilizes it, it won't become bound. Utilizes it in the service of God, because that's the soul's identity is spiritual. The body has certain propensities and must act according to those, but must stay detached. That's kind of a summary of these verses. So a person's in the midst of the material ocean, struggling for existence. The waves are tossing him around and he has no control over them. The waves being the three modes of material nature. Sometimes, suddenly we'll feel passionate. We'll want to prove ourselves. Sometimes we won't want to do anything, like what Mariah was saying, that mode of ignorance. Sometimes we'll be more reflective and contemplative. The modes come and will go. The modes will come and go. They'll toss us up and down. To the extent that we can steady our spiritual connection, we can get a boat that we can get out of this material ocean. Otherwise, we're helpless. And that's what Krishna's doing here. He's offering us a pathway of which to serve God, to steady our connection with God and come out of this material existence. So the invitation here isn't to do less, it's to live deeper, to let go of the illusion that we're the controller, and instead act in a way that purifies the heart and connects us to what's eternal. And that is the last verse that I have for the day. Does anybody else want to share anything? Anybody that
There one other thing about like the mindset shift that we were talking about. And I've been in this process of moving, and I had to I'm moving into a family apartment, and so I had to clean it out first. And one day I was just, I'm tired, I'm working a lot still, and I was like getting really mad. I was like, they're not even helping me, but they're like working all the time too, and they're older, so like there's not a lot they're doing. And so I was like getting frustrated, and I was like, like no one's really helping me, which someone was helping me. It was just like on the weekend whenever he was available. And it's Luna's older brother actually, but but it's just like weird. It's like the people you expect to be helping you aren't there to help you. And then you're like relying on people that it's kind of awkward because it's like he's a 19-year-old kid. It's like, I don't know, I feel bad, but he was so kind and caring, and he's such a sweet kid. But and hold on, Luna. And so I was like, but he wasn't there that day, so I was just like frustrated, like, oh my God. And then I was like, you know what? They're doing such a service for me, like help, like allowing me to stay there. I'm gonna it's gonna be better once I'm there. But in the moment, you're just frustrated at the moment. And then I was like, this is a service. It's helping them. It's helping me. And when I got out of the mindset of like, oh, no one's here to help me and this and that, I was like completely like, it just took a second. Like, no, I'm doing this as a service for them, and they're doing it as a service for me. And, that's a good thing. Like, and I was just able to completely get out of that mindset and like finish cleaning that night. Well, finish the portion that I was doing. So yeah, the mindset, when we can switch it to like, I'm doing this as a service, whether it's, and ultimately connecting it to God is the highest, but even doing it as a service for like your loved ones, your community, people you care about. And then all of a sudden it shifts, and then you'll see later, like things do happen, like everything still works out. Someone does come along and help, but Luna wants to say something today because I talked about her brother probably. Go ahead.
I call him bro bro.
You call him bro?
Thank you for sharing that, Luna.
She loves her older brother. It's so precious, but
sweet. Thank you for sharing. No, it's so true. I think I feel that way when I like cook for my husband. I feel that way. Like it just feels really good to do service for, somebody that you love or somebody that you appreciate or somebody that's doing things for you. It's really it can change something. I've cooked before and I've been in a bad mood, like he didn't do the dishes and now I have to cook, and or you can cook as like in the mood of appreciation, and it recharges you. It makes you feel happy. We could get there. Yeah. Thank you. Trevor.
I forgot to mention that I'll say the material senses, when you're sense gratifying and you're experiencing joy in that way, it's not only very temporary in that limited aspect, but it's limited in a way that it gets old. Just like you can't eat your favorite food every day. In a sense, that's a good way to view it. But with the real joy, when you're in the service attitude and you're in bhakti, your joy accumulates on an eternal scale. It's a very permanent almost like a bank account. You're storing all this beautiful energy. And when you get to a certain level, Krishna gives you access to Haladini Shakti. That's actually the specific energy that we're experiencing the real joy from. So it's a very high vibration. And I remember Radha talked like a while back on how to view the soul purification process in like a graph. You could view your vibration rising, like, and your lows aren't as low anymore, but your like consistency and your average vibration is rising along with your highs rising, and your lows are even rising, so it's like you're building that up, and the more you do, because there's no limits to it, the more of that Haladini Shakti you're going to experience, the more of the bliss you're going to experience. And then actually, as a byproduct, if you're not putting the sense gratification as your primary focus, you can actually gain more satisfaction from them. So you actually get the full abundance from what material nature has to offer whenever you're on those higher vibrations.
That's a rightful position, right? Yes. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Okay. If anybody else wants to share before we go, you can. Is there anything else? Stella, thank you. Thank you for coming. I saw your post there. Very nice. Very nice share. That was perfect. Thank you. Okay. Well, I will see you all on Thursday. Thanks for being here and doing the work, going through it. Let's all try to go through our week here. And when we're feeling in a funk or upset that things didn't go our way, let's try to find a way to dovetail it into service of either somebody or, the highest is God, and see how that uplifts us.
Haribol.
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 Hare
Haribol.
Krishna, everyone.
Thank you,
Krishna.
everyone.
My humble